Hello, my fellow extraordinary Americans. My name is Cosmos, and this is Extraordinary America. What is Extraordinary America? Extraordinary America is about the abolition of financial slavery. It is about the financial freedom of the 99%. Why? Well, you see, the essence of what defines America and being American has always been freedom, opportunity for a better life, and the pursuit of happiness. However, most Americans are not free. Most Americans are under the spell of financial slavery. They're suffering through massive levels of wealth and income inequality, right? Due to this coronavirus pandemic, they're suffering through a massive loss of jobs and unemployment. And of those that do have jobs, many are living from one paycheck to another, trading their time for money. They're going through these dead-end jobs, sometimes 2 to 3 of them, just to make ends meet, pay off their bills, and pay off their debts. That's not a way to live. Moreover, many of the people that are doing these dead-end jobs suffer under a narcissistic work culture, and this is prevalent especially in corporate America and blue-collar working America, where you have these corporations with these bosses that are super narcissistic, and they don't really treat the employees as people. They treat them as replaceable statistics, and they treat them with disrespect. So not only are we losing jobs at the moment, we're having the fear of losing jobs, and it's just creating massive amount of financial stress and anxiety amongst most Americans. And that's not a place to be. And the second point is that most Americans are not having an opportunity for a better life. They're suffering through a reduction of their purchasing power and overall wealth over a long period of time. This is due to a process called stagflation, which is basically stagnant wages combined with inflation of prices and cost of living, which is done due to the massive money printing of the fiat money, that is the US dollar, right? And moreover, on top of that, in order to maintain their lifestyle, they have to go through debt, which means that they have to work extra hours just to pay off their debts and pay off their bills, which means that they're completely financially enslaved, and their ability to have an opportunity for a better life is like minimized to a large extent. Most Americans are not going to be able to pursue happiness in the near future. This is because the coronavirus pandemic has initiated a massive economic depression, and deflation, which will be followed by a hyperinflation of the currency. And that is something that we have to take care about, right? But you see, all this put together means that the ideal of what America was regarding freedom is not applicable on the financial front. In fact, most Americans are under financial bondage or slavery, and this is utterly unacceptable and un-American. Therefore, Extraordinary America is about the abolition of financial slavery. It is about the financial freedom of the 99%. We should not be working for money. Money should be working for us. How is this to be done? In the short term, this is to be done by protecting your money's purchasing power by investing in non-dollar denominated assets like gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. This will protect your money from the devaluation of the dollar due to massive money printing, because the dollar is essentially a fiat currency. And in the long term, this is to be done by, number one, the financial education and transformation of the 99% into entrepreneurs and investors on the light side, with the goal of financial freedom. Number two, the creation of decentralized spiritual economic institutions led by Jedipreneurs, which are basically going to provide a universal basic income along with the 5 essentials of food and water, shelter, housing, education, and clothes to the 99%. They will also provide financial education and support with the goal of financial freedom and self-sufficiency for the 99%, the way a 1%er family would do for their children. That is because the Jedipreneurs will work for the sake of the father and mother of the entire universe, and we are all their children, essentially. And the third point is basically the replacement of the debt-based fiat monetary system with the American Dream Standard, or aka the Humanity Upliftment Standard. Anyways, in today's video, I want to elaborate on the problems that we're facing, right? In America on the financial front. The first one is the massive level of wealth and income inequality that we're going through right now between the 1% and the 99%. As I mentioned before, right, this coronavirus pandemic has created a massive loss of jobs. Right, I think as of like right now, at least 40 million people have essentially lost their jobs, and it's really chaotic and it's pretty bad. Right. On top of that, there's like, yeah, this is just like massive unemployment, and people are really financially stressed out because of that. But of those people that do have jobs, many of them are just living one paycheck to another, and they're just like trading their time for money. Right, they're going through these dead end jobs that they don't really like. Right, sometimes like two of them, just to make ends meet. And they're doing this because they got to pay out their bills and pay out their debts, right? And this is basically a form of like misery and suffering. Like you're going to a place you don't want to go because you just got to pay the bills. Like you are enslaved to money rather than what it should be the other way around, where money is working for you, right? This is creating a lot of stress and anxiety. And a lot of people, they don't have hope for the future, right? They feel like they're stuck. It's a feeling of being stuck, and that's not a good feeling at all, right? And of these people that are working these dead-end jobs, many are working in a narcissistic work culture in corporate America and blue-collar America, where they have these bosses and they have these corporate heads who have no compassion for them, right? They're just cogs in the wheel. There's like utter apathy and indifference for them, and they're basically replaceable because of abundance of labor, which is caused due to outsourcing, which is caused due to globalization, right? So basically, even if somebody wants a raise in their income, they'll be like, you know what, we don't have to have you, we can replace you easily. And on top of that, it's like many of them have like really bad working conditions. Now in the future, there's going to be a thing called automation, which is going to take away even more jobs. And that's going to be devastating for the economy altogether. So all of these problems are confronting us, right? And the second point, which is the continuation from this first point of massive inequality, is basically the reduction of our money's purchasing power and overall wealth of the Americans over a long period of time, right? What do I mean by that? What is purchasing power? So you see, right now over here on my left hand side is the Indian rupee, which is a 100 rupee note, and here is the US dollar, which is a $20 note. Both of them are fiat currencies, which means that they're both backed by nothing tangible or scarce, and they can be and they're backed by our collective acceptance of it as money, and the government saying that it is money, right? That's why everybody's using it. So purchasing power is basically it's not about how much money you have, it's about what you can buy with the money that you have, right? If you take this $20 in the grocery store, like 50 years ago, you could buy so much more stuff, versus now you can buy some stuff, and in the future, you'll buy even fewer stuff. Let's say we're talking about a Starbucks coffee, right? With a $20 note, you can buy 5 venti iced vanilla lattes, versus with a 100 rupee note, you can only buy 1/5 of that. You can only buy, it'll take at least the same 100 rupee note can only buy you 1/5. So that's what I'm talking about in purchasing power, right? So when you go to Zimbabwe or Venezuela, right, everybody's a millionaire and a billionaire over there. It doesn't mean anything, right? Because with their millions and billions of Zimbabwe notes or Venezuelan dollar notes, they can't even buy a loaf of bread, or they can barely buy groceries. So you see, the biggest thing that you got to realize is the purchasing power. It's not how much money you have, it's what you can buy with that money. And right now we're at fear of the massive reduction of purchasing power, because the US dollar is a fiat currency and it's been devalued due to massive money printing, right? And so basically our overall purchasing power and overall wealth has been reducing for a long period of time. And this is basically due to this principle of stagflation, which is stagnant wages or lower wages over a period of time combined with inflation of prices and cost of living. The inflation part is caused by money printing of the fiat money, where the banks and the government are printing money in large amounts, and the stagnant wages part where you're having the same income over a long period of time and it's not matching up with the rise in prices of groceries and insurance and all the other bills that you have to pay, is basically coming from globalization and the outsourcing of jobs, where you are having an abundance of cheap labor. And so basically companies can afford to pay lesser income to most people because they know that every other person is replaceable. This is the reason for working longer hours for lower wages, because if you have like a company that's based on maximizing profit at the expense of the happiness of the worker or whatever, you're basically going to have a situation where they're going to make you work longer hours for lower wages just because they can, because they know that they can find a replacement for you. And I don't think that should be done, because that's extremely narcissistic, right? And combined with inflation of prices, where the fiat money has been printed in massive amounts, that is leading to the devaluation of the US dollar over a long period of time, right? Like 20 or 50 years ago, if you went to the grocery store, this $20 could buy you like a lot. It could buy you at least like a month's worth of groceries and much more, right? But now what can a $20 buy you except bananas, milk, and a bunch of other stuff? That's what I'm talking about. Now, to compound this problem is just basically the concept of debt, right? In order to maintain your lifestyle over a period of time, like where you have to pay your mortgage, you have to pay your car bills, you have to pay your electricity bills and a bunch of other bills, right? You have to, and you're keeping up with the inflation and you're having stagnant prices. You're taking up debt in order to maintain a certain lifestyle and a standard of living. And what happens is that debt is a spend now, pay later philosophy, right? It's really enticing. Like, it looks really appealing. It's like easy money. But once you start getting into debt, that's when you realize that you have bills to pay, you have debt, and you have interest to pay like every month. And what happens is that now you're forced to work, even if you don't want to, just to pay off this debt, and in addition to paying off your bills. And I don't know about you, but that's the example of financial enslavement or slavery, right? It's where you don't want to work, but you have to work in order to pay off your bills and to maintain a certain standard of living, right? And that is something that needs to be addressed in a certain way. So when you combine stagflation and debt together, and you see that your purchasing power is being reduced over a period of time and your overall wealth is being reduced due to all these factors, you see the gradual disappearance of the middle class, and that is something that has to be addressed, right? And the third point, and which is a continuation of the second point, is basically the fact that the coronavirus pandemic has initiated us into a massive economic depression and deflation of our currency supply, which will be followed by a hyperinflation, where the fiat money, that's the US dollar, will be devalued in a massive way, and your purchasing power and all your savings will be gone, and it'll lead to the massive rise in prices and cost of living. You see, the 2008 crisis has not really been solved, right? It has just been like postponed. What they did to solve the 2008 banking crisis was they printed massive amounts of fiat money, which was backed by nothing, and then they put it into the stock market, real estate bonds, etc., and it just created an everything bubble, right? But it's basically at a certain point, and they also had zero interest rates on top of that, combined with this process of quantitative easing, which is basically printing a large amount of money backed by nothing. Now, what happened is that the coronavirus pandemic has initiated a popping of this bubbles in stock, real estate, bonds, etc., and it's starting to create a depression or a recession, right? And now what happens is that the currency is going to be deflated, and a lot of people are going to lose their jobs as a result. And what's going to happen is that in response to that, the banks and the government are going to print a lot of money, which they're already doing, and they're going to lower interest rates to zero or close to zero. But as a result, they're going to do that. But what we need to realize is that this will create a hyperinflation in the future. How so? You see, the GDP of a country is basically based on on like the amount of money in circulation multiplied by the velocity or the amount of transactions that are happening between individuals, right? So let's say like I have like a $20 note and I transact and then I exchange it to one person, the GDP is like $20 essentially, right? But what's happening right now is because of the economic, because of the initiation of the depression, the velocity is now going down, which means people are saving a lot of money out of fear. But at a certain point, like the mood of the country will shift and people will start spending again. And that's when the amount of money, all that extra money that has been printed out of nothing by the banks and government will come into play, and that will lead to a massive rise in prices and cost of living, and your savings will essentially be destroyed because the same $100 or $1,000 that you have that could purchase a certain amount of goods in the grocery store or anywhere will now be able to purchase even less because of all that extra currency. Because whenever currency is created, it is devaluing every individual dollar that's out there. So the only way to protect that is by investing in gold, silver, or cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, which is non-dollar denominated asset, which basically protects your purchasing power. Because you see, it's not about how much money you have, it's about the purchasing power or how much you can buy with the money that you have, right? So these are the three essential problems, right? And I want to conclude by saying that yes, what defines us as Americans is freedom, opportunity for a better life, and the pursuit of happiness. But unfortunately, we are now suffering through a massive level of wealth and income inequality. We're suffering through a reduction in our purchasing power due to stagflation and debt and like our overall wealth, right? We're having loss of jobs. We have all these bills to pay that we're not able to pay that easily. We're living paycheck to paycheck. We're having these dead-end jobs. We have a narcissistic work culture. And now we also have to go through an economic depression, which will be followed by a hyperinflation. And we have to save our purchasing power accordingly, right? So what is Extraordinary America about? It is about the abolition of financial slavery. It is about the financial freedom of the 99%, because we should not be working for money. We should not be dictated by money. Money, on the other hand, should be working for us. And that's how it should always be. And the way to do this, and how is this to be done? In the long term, it is to be done by, number one, the financial education and transformation of the 99% into entrepreneurs and investors on the light side with the goal of financial freedom. Number two is the creation of spiritual economic institutions led by Jedipreneurs that are decentralized, that create a universal basic income, and also provide the 5 essentials of food and water, shelter, healthcare, education, and clothes, right? And the third point is obviously the replacement of the debt-based fiat monetary system with the American Dream Standard or the Humanity Upliftment Standard. Because the money that we have right now is basically debt-based fiat money. And that is one of the sources of all the problems we're going through right now, right? If you like what we're talking about, please subscribe to our channel. In the next video, we'll talk about the solutions in brief. All right, thank you for listening. This is Cosmos, and this is Extraordinary America.